said we can start now. Go ahead.
Great. Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome once again to the Wednesday evening cafe, the IDEC Cafe. Every fourth Wednesday or the last Wednesday of a month, evening at 9 p.m., we bring you science from across the world. We bring you different topics which are of current interest to clinicians, educators, and people living with diabetes and metabolic diseases. We have two speakers and we have a panel discussion at the end. Today, we are very happy to introduce our topic, which is basically AI and technology. And our first speaker is Dr. Amit Kumar Day from Kolkata. He's a consultant physician, diabetologist, obesity physician, metabolic disorder physician. He has experience of more than 12 years in clinical practice. And basically, he is a person who is very interested in technology. And across the country, we hear a lot of new things that he's developed. He is certified with the American Board of Artificial Intelligence in Medicine. He's a chair of Doctors AI, which is a medical community connecting around 400 HCPs on AI, as well as that he has currently founded something very interesting, which is Empower T1, which is a group for Type 1 community, where also they are working at empowerment. So I think with a lot of awards to his name, we will go directly and hear him, and he's going to talk to us about artificial intelligence and diabetes and the current clinical scenarios. Welcome, and over to you, Dr. Amit.
Good evening, everyone, and warm good evening and gratitude and thank you to Dr. Sanjay Agarwal, sir, Dr. Rachana Sada, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for the kind introduction. It's an honor, it's a pleasure to be with you all here at the IDEC Cafe. And I'm so glad and I'm so happy that Sir and Ma'am has dedicated a time to discuss the role of artificial intelligence in the domain of diabetes and metabolic medicine. And I think this is the need of the hour because a lot is going to change in the evolving years through this landscape of AI and technology. So a warm welcome to all our audience, and without wasting much time, I'm going to get into my slides.
I'll just interrupt for a second while you share, and I would ask our audience to please write in their questions as you hear our speakers into the chat box. All your questions will be coming to us, and we will be taking them at the end of the two talks. Those will be questions which will be presented to both our speakers. Over to you, Dr. Amit, again.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. So I hope my slide is visible and
Yes.
yeah, great. So dear friends, I've been entrusted with the task of introducing artificial intelligence and its role in diabetes management, and where it fascinates all of us is the role of generative artificial intelligence, which can actually change the whole landscape of how we practice medicine and specifically chronic care medicine like diabetes or other metabolic disorders. So, over this 25 to 30 minutes allotted to me, I will be taking you through the possible landscape and the places where we can explore generative AI towards more precision care that can change the whole scenario, the way we look at diabetes practice overall. So this is my disclosure slide. Of course, I do not have any financial interest or conflict of interest with the content of the presentation. And of course, when you talk of AI, we will be speaking about some proprietorship large language models in this presentation, but it is solely intended for the purpose of illustration, and I do not imply any endorsement. And I must also disclose that we have used a lot of artificial intelligence tool to summarize and add creativity to the content and prepare the presentation. So, if you look at the whole landscape of artificial intelligence, as we see that it is the present and we are heading into a future probably where we will be looking at artificial general intelligence or artificial super intelligence in the next 2 decades, it is a rapidly evolving medical landscape and it's going to transform everything. Now, these 8 blocks which I'm showing you would be probably the 8 areas where we will see a lot of changes happening in the domain of healthcare as a whole. So we will see a lot of personalized treatment, as in precision care medicine coming in. We will be having a lot of virtual health assistant, and I will be introducing to one of that today through my talk. that will be evolving, that will get validated, that will get evaluated, and it will even be created by clinicians and doctors like us. We are already seeing a lot of use of AI in medical imaging in the field of radiology in advanced diagnostics. We will be getting a lot of data, and through that data, we can have machine learning give us a lot of predictive analytics, especially in the sector of chronic care disease, where the outcome of the disease or the prognostic outcome can be predicted, and the long-term chronic complication outcome can be predicted with the help of data analytics. If you are looking at artificial intelligence space, then you would be familiar with a term called AlphaFold. It is by Google. And the AlphaFold is actually going to be a revelation where it is going to escalate the drug discovery. And there is also going to be a lot of treatment optimization happening, especially in the field of cancer therapy, in various other fields where artificial intelligence is going to play a role. Now you will have super added mixed reality or virtual reality. I think some of you would be aware of the Apple Provision, which has already come, and many people in the United States are already using it. And I even know a Brazilian surgeon who is using that to do, laparoscopic surgery with mixed reality. So it will help us optimize surgery. And add to that will be the addition of robotics, which will transform every bit of surgery. And with all this coming into AI, you will be seeing there is a lot of escalation of remote AI monitoring. So telemedicine, as we are used to, will probably evolve with a new with a new shape, and we will be seeing a lot of remote AI monitoring happening. Now, if I come to our domain of diabetes and metabolic care, if we look at some of the challenges that we currently face today also in 2024, despite of having good connectivity and a lot of education amongst our peer groups, and also we try to educate our patients, but we still find these problems as some of the challenges that limits us from practicing what we are preaching. So early disease detection is a problem. Adherence to medication and compliance is a big problem. Lifestyle changes is a big problem, which is often dependent upon a lot of behavioral modification in the individual. Regular monitoring, laboratory levels, continued follow up with the doctor becomes a problem, which often leads to increased cost of care, which can become a big burden in a country like India. And there is always a language gap and an education gap. All this leading to diabetes distress and psychological impact. Burdened with that is the complex treatment plans, especially polypharmacy, so much comorbidity that gets the patient into a lot of perplexity. Then comes the issues of access to specialized care, especially when it comes to the semi-urban or the rural settings. And of course, at every level, we find that there is a communication barrier that plays a major step limiting factor in practicing what we preach. So the question I want to ask you all is, can artificial intelligence and technology help us some of this problem? And by the end of my talk, I'll try and convince you all that yes, it can solve a majority of the problems, if not all of the problems, and probably one day it will solve all of these problems that I've cited down here. So the question we need to ask ourselves at the moment is, well, if this could be a solution to a lot of our problems, why exactly do we need to use AI, and why do we need to even talk about it in healthcare and medicine? This is precisely the reason why. What we have been used to over the last 2 decades is evidence-based medicine. While it holds so much of strength in the way we practice, in the way we have evolved as clinicians, and way we have been taught how to look at real world evidence and how to look at a clinical trial and take out the inference out of it, we are only looking at the tip of the iceberg. What data driven, intelligence based medicine using artificial intelligence can give us is the look of at the whole iceberg. And that is going to be the key to changing a lot of perspective that we carry in the domain of medicine, especially if I say diabetes and metabolic care. So this is the precise reason why we must adopt and adapt to the use of this new technology called artificial intelligence and various other health tech tools in getting a more data-driven, intelligent precision medicine. So what is artificial intelligence? It's basically aggregating a set of data, giving you a wisdom out of it, and with that intelligence drawn, it is going to give you some kind of a prediction. So that is what artificial intelligence is. Now, if I bring you into a more focused introspection of how artificial intelligence is going to change the landscape of diabetes management, then again, these 6 blocks are going to be the key places where you will find a lot of evolution happening in diabetes management. So one is, of course, as I said earlier, in the prediction and the risk stratification of the disease. Now, this is a very important aspect that will depend largely on the data. So the data is going to be the fuel of the prediction tools that will be coming up. And a lot of machine learning will be used in getting these predictive algorithms. While these predictive algorithms can be a global in nature, they will also need to be geographical in nature based on the subset and the demographic population that we're talking about. And it is only a matter of time that we start finding these predictive algorithms in our electronic medical records to give us a more kind of a guided approach. The second most important aspect is going to be we have always been taught and we have always been teaching our patients about the importance of diabetes self management education. So, DSME plays a so important role. And if you can integrate the subjects of DSME with a virtual AI chatbot using generative AI, you're looking at an immense potential on transformation of personalized care to the patient. The third place where it is already being used is, of course, the insulin treatment support in the form of the insulin pumps, and also some CGMS are coming up with artificial intelligence technology. And I will show you that in my upcoming slides. Another place where we have explored thoroughly is the use of artificial intelligence in retinopathy screening and monitoring. And over the last 5, 6 years, this particular landscape has evolved with so much of research using deep learning technology. And now we are also using generative adversarial networks, which is another form of deep learning, a more refined deep learning to give you more specified and sensitive outcome of the retinopathy images. You can use a similar predictive algorithm layered on top of deep learning to give you foot ulcer prediction and through remote monitoring. So in this case, you can just have a thermal mapping of the foot image, and that can give you some kind of a predictive analytics as to how quickly that image can, that particular foot problem can progress into a neuroischemic ulcer and so on. And of course, you would be probably looking at a virtual diabetologist or a virtual endocrinologist support to the doctor, not like a replacement, but a support to the doctor through a clinical decision support system that will probably be taking us through one step ahead in precision care. So let's take one of these at a time. So the first one, which I spoke about, is of course the role of AI in prediction and risk stratification. So this is where a lot of machine learning will be used, and you will be finding some of the statistics tool like logistic regression, support vector mechanism. What this is going to do is predominantly use data mining from the EMR records. So all the electronic health records and electronic medical records can be funneled. The data can be funneled out of it, and these AI algorithms can actually analyze that complex set of data using machine learning, and some places also with a layer of generative AI, and give you such predictions that as individuals we would not have thought of, when we are looking at just the evidence-based driven prediction. So this is where the data-driven intelligence-based medicine comes, and this can be a very promising tool in kind of changing the way we look at a disease and predict its outcome, and thereby decide on the treatment guideline and modalities for our patients. So again, if you look at some of the research, and I always promise to support my commands with research because it should not sound very futuristic. So if you look at some of the research that has been happening, like you can look at one of this paper which looks at machine learning algorithms can effectively identify diabetes risk at an early stage, improving early diagnosis and reducing complication. And I strongly believe that this is solely the purpose for which these predictive algorithms can be used. And then you have another deep learning algorithm, like which is called a recurrent neural network model. Although some of you would not be aware of these terms, but trust me, as we go along, we would get familiar with these terms more and more as we get ourselves literate about AI and data. This particular study shows that it can effectively predict cardiovascular stroke risk in diabetic foot infection patients, aiding in early diagnosis. So these common correlations that we normally try to do using our basic biostatistics tool can now be done using machine learning, giving a more refined and more precise predictive analytics. This is a space that we all need to watch out for, and this is so important because it can help us and augment the diabetes self-management education for our patients. So if you remember the study of the Look Ahead trial that used machine learning, and it reanalyzed and it confirmed that type 2 diabetes patients can benefit from intensive lifestyle intervention. And there is this concept of just-in-time adaptive intervention, which basically means reaching out to the right patient at the right point of time with the right form of information. That brings a miraculous behavioral modification in the patient. And it doesn't have to be once, it can be repeated in a more personalized way, because that is going to transform into a realistic outcome in that individual. And I think that is the biggest goal of diabetes self-management education. So this is a space where we must explore using generative AI towards diabetes self-education for the individuals. Let's look at one of this example. This is available in the US. This is called January AI. Now, for us, we always understand that, using a continuous glucose monitoring can sometimes be very expensive. But what if a 14-day continuous glucose monitoring graph can pick up a prediction of how the body of the individual is responding to certain food groups, and thereby, even beyond the 14th day, when the patient is not wearing the continuous glucose monitoring, it can give a prediction to the patient that if you have had this much amount of calorie or this particular food group, this is how your sugars have responded, and this is how your blood sugar pattern look like, and this is predicting that this is how your blood sugars can spike up over the next few days. So I think this is something that is being worked on by some of the Indian companies, as I'm aware of, and I think this is something which will be very useful added to our continuous glucose monitoring, that with the CGM you get a predictive analytics that can give a prediction to the patient as to how sugars are going to fluctuate, the peaks and the troughs, based on machine learning and generative AI. The other space that we must all look out for is digital twinning. And I think this is a very important space which is being explored at the moment in the nutrition space, getting a nutritional digital twin, which is right now being worked upon by some of our colleagues based out of India and abroad. But we will also see a lot of digital twinning coming towards precision medicine and how an individual responds to certain pharmacotherapy. So the concept of digital twinning is basically creating a virtual replica of a physical entity to stimulate and optimize a process. So it means getting basically a virtual replica and predicting a personalized response to that individual, as precise and personalized as it can get. Well, do we have some science and research behind it? These are three of the top papers that I can get for you. So you can look at the first paper. It's a human digital twin for personalized elderly type 2 diabetes management. And it shows that it improves the time in range by reducing insulin infusion by 14 to 29%. Another twin technology being used in type 1 diabetes patient in the pediatric population using advanced technologies, which is very user friendly. So you can just see two researches happening in either spectrum of the age group where digital twinning is proving out to be very effective. And the last one is, of course, some of you would always be knowing of. We have some of our senior mentor names here, Dr. Sashank Joshi, Dr. Bansi Shabu, who is already working on this, the use of digital twin technology to, for diabetes remission through nutritional modification. So I think this is a technology that is going to be evolved, and this is a space in diabetes and metabolic care that we all must be looking at. It uses a lot of data, a lot of technology, and also integrated with a lot of artificial intelligence. Now let's look into the most happening part where artificial intelligence is actually being used every day is the insulin pumps. And one of the most talked about, and of course, the most standard insulin pump is the Minimed 780G, which has got the AI-driven adjustment. So here, the 780G leverages the AI to adjust the basal insulin every 5 minutes. Again, how does this work? This works based on the predictive analytics that it has derived from the data that it reaches. And it has also got a AI-powered meal detection. So it kind of automatically corrects the insulin dosage for missed or underestimated meal boluses. So that, of course, enhances the user experience. And of course, this particular pump has got multiple facets like smart Bluetooth connectivity, AI seamless integration, and things like that, which makes it much more user-friendly and gets the patient much more clinched to the technology that they're using. But this is one of the example of one of my patient where we have been using 780G, and you can see a fantastic time in range being achieved just with this precision coming in. I mean, we could never even imagine having 100% time in range, but Minimed 780G had made this possible just because of the bird's eye view and the prediction that it is giving, that is making the precision adjustment so. But the purpose of my talk is, do we always understand that what exactly goes on in this insulin pump? So next 3 slides, I'm going to tell you how this technology works. And that should get us a little bit cued about learning a little bit more about these algos that goes on in these particular pumps. So this whole concept of the insulin pump AI works on something called control theory. So the control theory means that it basically sets a control set point. And the whole purpose of the algorithm is to bring through mathematical calculations in a planned way, in a supervised way, autonomously towards the control set point. So that's how the theory works. And based on this, the algorithm which is used is called the PID algorithm. There is also another algorithm called the MPC algorithm. I'll take you through these algorithms a little bit more in details. The PID algorithm has got a full form of proportional, integral, and derivative. So these are the three terms that we need to understand, because next time you're using a pump, if we have a little bit nuanced understanding of how these algorithms works, probably we would be a better user of the pump, knowing the technology that works behind it. So what exactly does this algorithm do? So based on control theory, you find that the PID algorithm is the most commonly used algorithm, and the 780G pump uses the PID algorithm. So the PID algorithm basically adjusts the control signal proportional to the error. I'll give you an example, nuanced example, which will help you understand this better. The integral algorithm basically integrates the error over the time, and it learns from the past and it corrects the past error, right? And the derivative algorithm basically predicts the future. So it looks into the future, and based on the prediction it gets, it recommends the changes of the basal rate. So these are the three algorithms that work simultaneously. Other than the three algorithms, there is also a model predictive algorithm, which is basically a more sensitive version of the PID algorithm. Now, with the newer pumps that you will be seeing, which is beyond the 780G, the other pumps, the patch pumps, some of the patch pumps which are coming out, which is not available in India yet, but it's available in the other parts of the country, other parts of the world, they are also having an overlapping with machine learning. So with the control theory algorithm in place, if you have a data-driven model that can give a more nuanced predictive sort of an analysis as to how the blood sugars will fluctuate based on what it has learned on the past through a machine learning algorithm, that will enhance the performance and sensitivity of the algorithm. And this undergoes a phase of reinforcement learning. Reinforcement learning is basically a reward mechanism which kind of explains how this machine learning algorithm works. A little complex diagram, but let's try to understand the focus part here. So you can look here, the set point is all that we need to reach at, and it uses this proportional integration and differentiation or differential algorithm to reach at to the particular set point, and that undergoes a feedback mechanism. Along with that, this is integrated with machine learning, which has got basically various steps like a pre-processing, features extraction, standardization, modeling, etc. These are a little technical things that happens. Now, I know this will be a little difficult for most of our users to understand. Let's simplify this. Simple way to understand is if you can understand that you're flying an aeroplane, okay? If you're flying a plane, imagine that you need to be at 35,000 feet altitude, right? So you are manually flying the plane, but you need to put this on an autopilot. So the proportional algorithm is basically going to see what the gap is. So what is your estimated flying altitude and what gap it is there? And it will find out the gap. It will find out how much time that it needs to be going into that gap. That's what the proportional algorithm will do. And it will always try to take you back to the 35,000 altitude to maintain that particular altitude. The integral algorithm is actually going to remember the past. So it will actually see how much you have deviated from your altitude. And next time it is going to try to bring you back to that altitude by learning from the past. And the derivative algorithm is actually going to predict the future. It will learn from the past, from the integral algorithm, and it will predict that if I'm going at this speed, at this particular algorithm, this particular altitude, then how is my probability of shifting out of this altitude and going into a different altitude at a different speed, and it will try to prevent that and keep it at that particular altitude. Just convert this when you're using the basal bolus rate adjustment in the insulin pump, and you will understand exactly how this is now working. So this particular control theory is all that it is based on, and understanding a little bit of control theory will probably make us much more useful or much more user-friendly when we are directing or instructing our patients to use an insulin pump. And this is the basic AI that runs behind it. Some of the other examples are Guardian Connect, and of course, most of us are aware of it. And this is AI-enabled real-time continuous glucose monitoring. Again, it's based on a predictive algorithm that alerts the patient of a significant swing in blood glucose level, that even before the patient hits a hypo, the patient gets an alarm that you're possibly going to hit an hypo. And that is the low prediction that the patient gets based on the pattern in which the blood sugar level is falling. Again, a predictive learning using machine learning. Predictive algorithm using machine learning. And this is another fantastic example of using AI in the continuous glucose monitoring system. The islet beta bionic pancreas also uses artificial intelligence. So this again has got an AI-driven system which autonomously adjusts the insulin doses based on the continuous glucose monitoring system. And it has got a simplified mealtime management, a personalized delivery, and ease of use to the individual. And it kind of simplifies the carb counting with the algorithm learning and adaptation over a period of time. Again, the same principle of predictive analytics being used. The other space where AI has definitely evolved is the space of retinopathy. And 2018, we all know the US FDA approved the first AI algorithm to be developed by Topcon Medical, and that's where the whole nuance of using AI under approval started. And now we have so many tools that can use deep learning, to be very specific, artificial neural networks, and that can give us fantastic retinopathy recommendations to our patients. So this looks like a 5-minute test, but again, a lot of neural networks are involved. The first stage involves data gathering. So getting a lot of data, labeling them, annotating them, putting them together. This is how it's built. And after the stage of annotating and labeling, this is where the level of supervised learning comes in. They are sort of categorized, like this is a cotton wool spot, this is a retinal vitreous hemorrhage, this is a hard exudate, etc. They get labeled and annotated so that the images keeps on learning. And the more the images, the more is the better labeling and the more is the sensitivity of the output. Then it undergoes a level of iterations. And this is the most important layer where there is a multiple neural networks working. And through this hidden layer, the images are passed. And every time an image goes through so many multiple layers of iteration, better the number of layers, better is the sensitivity and the specificity prediction of that particular deep learning model in predicting a diabetic retinopathy. So this is how the report would look like. It would give you a kind of prediction. These are some of the examples of using it in my clinic. This has been using it for so long, about 5 years now in my clinic. And you can see how beautifully it gives a prediction as to the percentage of the possibility of having no retinopathy, mild non-proliferative retinopathy, moderate or severe non-proliferative retinopathy. So this is a thing that we have all explored and researched. Some of our research that we worked on over the last couple of years, we looked at the sensitivity and the specificity, and we found fantastic use cases with 100% sensitivity of these models being able to predict sight-threatening diabetic retinopathy. So it is 100% sensitive in predicting a sight-threatening retinopathy so that no sight-threatening retinopathy can get missed and it can be immediately referred to a ophthalmologist. We also did a community screening, and guess what? This was done in a famous place called Chandni Chowk in Kolkata. We sample sized about 5,000 people, and we found the prevalence of DR in the community through AI-based retinopathy screening itself was 13%, with a higher prevalence of the unknown patient who are undiagnosed of hyperglycemia as well. Quickly, let's look at the AI-based smartphone camera, and I've introduced this to you earlier in my introduction. And this is where you will be actually looking at the thermal images. And these thermal images will be captured, it will be heat mapped, and again, based on a predictive machine learning pattern recognition, it is going to predict that how quickly that particular lesion of that particular ulcer can worsen into a deep-seated ulcer, or how quickly can it cure. It can predict on wound healing, and that would be fantastic in terms of remote patient monitoring for most of the clinicians and podiatrists. You can also have special smart insoles. Now, these insoles are going to be again based on thermal mapping that will be taking the particular gait of the individual, and it will give a prediction to that individual based on his walking pattern or gait, that which part of his feet is more prone to develop a pressure sore or a pressure ulcer going ahead based on his pattern of walking. Oh, well, this was one of our paper we worked up in IDEC 2023, where we did a review of literature about all the technological advancements on AI in diabetic foot. And it was we looked at multiple number of papers when we really found that there's a lot of robust evidence happening, a lot of research is going on. And we also know some of our colleagues across India who are doing a lot of robust research with their foot ulcer images to create more predictive algorithms going ahead. As we go ahead, you'll be finding that there will be use cases of clinician decision support system that will work in this kind of an ecosystem. So you'll have the pump, you'll have the CGMS, you will have the virtual chatbots, and then the doctor also connected through a loop. And it's going to be a complete closed system, which will be guided by artificial intelligence. This already exists, actually. There's something called RIAMed. This has been built by a group of researchers based out of Israel. And this was the first one to receive FDA clearance for both type 1 and type 2 diabetes management. It is literally a virtual endocrinologist that kind of connects the doctor, the healthcare providers, the nutritionist. It connects the data from the pump, the CGM, and gives in a lot of data inputs and predictions and helps the doctor take the right decision in a most precise way for the patient. Now, the last part of my talk is going to be discussing about using artificial intelligence with precision diabetology and generative AI. So generative AI, as we understand, is using a set of data in the form of text, image, speech, and running it through a foundation model to get various output. Now, this is multimodal. So you will put in a text, but you will get the output in form of audio, video, or any other form of output that you want, or image. So one example is Chat GPT, and you will find fantastic use cases of Chat GPT in education, in providing medication reminder, in monitoring assistant, mental health support, resource guidance, dietary advice, as well as in exercise recommendation and treatment clarification, and also in helping prescription analysis. This is some of my early studies where we tried to look at how quickly it can help in diabetes self-management education. And you can see the presentation on the left was done using Chat GPT, how it simplifies a conversation between patient and a doctor. Let me quickly give you an example of how you can use a Chat GPT. So this is a response with the Chat GPT 4, where a patient is prompting in that I'm a diabetic patient and I need some advice. And you can see how beautifully it is giving a poised response towards a more nuanced answer about getting. So these are some of our early work, but now we have something better that I will be just introducing you all, and that you can use it there right itself. Again, dietary recommendations are fantastic. You can just ask some dietary recommendation, and these are all using ChatGPT 4. So you can get much more customized diet even in regional language for the individual. These are predominantly to be used as guidelines and recommendations, and not directly as a replacement to a specialist. We have also explored whether it can provide emotional support, and it does go quite do well. And we have seen that in our virtual chatbot Madhu as well. And once I take you through it, you will really find the nuances where it is working so beautifully in providing empathetical support to the patient, something that is lacking in our care because of the lack of time, because of the paucity of time. So it will not be far away. We will have your glucometer integrated with generative artificial intelligence and natural language processing, and that will kind of make your glucometer talk to you. So that will again have that just in time behavioral intervention for the patient to provide better clinical outcomes in making those modifications in their lifestyle and behavior. Also, we can have this generative AI come right into our wearables. I think all of us are wearing a wearable, and that can again speak to you. It can give you instant alerts, it can give you hypoglycemic alerts, it can give you behavioral support, it can give you dietary guidance, it can engage, and it can also be a feedback to the clinician. So continuous feedback loop can work with the clinicians. Well, this is something we have worked on, is how you can simply analyze a continuous glucose monitoring using Chat GPT. And this is an example that I want to show all of you, because if there are some nutritionists, some healthcare providers who are not very familiar of analyzing a CGM graph, you can use this particular tool that you have developed. So this is a CGM graph. As you can see, the readings are all over the place. And we have created something called CGMS guide. And you can just use this to feed this particular CGM PDF into the Chat GPT. And it's going to give you a complete summary beautiful summary of the average blood glucose, the estimated A1C, the variations in the blood glucose, and it quickly gives some kind of comment, abstract comment on the glycemic variability as well. Well, for a physician or a clinician, this might not be of much use, but for a healthcare provider who's a dietitian who doesn't understand the nuances much of understanding those graphs, or even for a patient, this particular tool can be used to analyze their CGM graph. So this is the QR code. You can scan, you can use it. This is available for GPT-4 users. So if you're using the paid version of GPT, you can use this, and it's been trained on 200 plus data now. So it fairly gives a good response to CGM analysis. One of our paper that we looked at of how we can actually use generative AI Chat GPT in diabetes care, and this kind of summarizes the whole everything that I've just said, and it's all there in this 4 or 5 pages article that we published. So now introducing all of you to something that we have built as a community, as doctors community, and this is called Madhu AI. So this is integrating a large language model. It is actually India's first WhatsApp user interface AI chatbot, which has been built, evaluated, and validated by doctors. It is a patient education knowledge resource platform, something that's going to help us in taking that diabetes self-management education to our patients. And it has been fine-tuned over this proprietary model, and not just fine-tuned, but also evaluated and validated by some of our friends. So these are the stages of validation it has undergone: the random, the standardized validation, and we are now planning the patient use validation with ethical clearance in the community at large as well. So what we are trying to do here is create an ecosystem where there can be a human in the loop, and the human is going to validate the AI response. And that is so important for the ethical use of AI. This is what Dr. Bharat Saboo will be talking about right after me. So this is our whole team of Madhu AI, and you can see some familiar names. We have the people across the country who have been using this over 3 months and as role playing as patients, asking it structured questions, and then evaluating the response. And the backend team has been working very hard to sort of give you the fine-tuned response so that at the end of the day, we create something that does no harm, which is the first principle in medicine. These are some of the questions that we asked to our chatbot. Does the chatbot give correct answers that make sense for the patient's question about their health? And most of the people agreed. Is the chatbot more innovative and helpful compared to other educational tools? Again, many of the people agreed in the random validation stage. And this was actually carried out by 206 doctors. And there was standardized validation where the chatbot, is it helpful and understanding as compared to that with the human doctor? So most of the doctors said that it is not inferior to the human response. So that was the outcome that we have got. So this is how you can use it. Takes you directly into the WhatsApp, and then you can start prompting, write a question to it. You can ask a question as a type 1. You can all start using it. This is the QR code you see on the left, and you can scan it and you can start using it right away, and it's going to give you beautiful answer. And I think most of you are already using it, where we have already shared with some of you. Now, this is something I wanted to introduce today for the first time. This has not been introduced. Is we are working on giving voice assistance to Madhu, and this is a live example of one of our researchers using it. I'll just take 1 minute before ending, and we'll take you. This is the user question to Madhu, and we'll show you the response. So let's see how Madhu responded. So just the reason why I took you through this particular conversation is number one, it actually picked up getting a nightmare could be sign of a hypoglycemia. That's quite intelligent for a virtual chatbot. And at the end, it always has been fine-tuned to tell that, if you're having a problem, you must reach out to a healthcare provider. And this advice is not a replacement of a healthcare provider's advice. And this is where the question of validation and evaluation of Madhu comes. So going ahead, we'll be working on this project further to give specialized agents to customized bot to address the need and practice trends of individual doctors, communities at a large. This is another podcast that we've recently had with the CEO of Microsoft AI for Health. If you would be interested to understand how the space is evolving, you can scan the QR code on the right, and you would find this 1 hour YouTube link where you can check out the podcast. And of course, this is a community that where we all sort of focused on AI education, AI validation, AI evaluation, and more importantly, AI research by our clinician with one goal and one motto: artificial intelligence for the doctors by the doctors. Thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you very much for inviting me. I think I overshoot my time. Kindly forgive me for that. I'll be happy to take in questions at the end.
Wow. So thank you, Dr. Amit. That was a very rapid fire round, but very, very enlightening, very interesting. And we have flood of questions in the chat box. But before we go to those questions, we have another very interesting topic by a prolific speaker, Dr. Bharat Saboo from Indore. He's the director at Prayas Diabetes Center. He's trained in data science for precision medicine from Edinburgh University. He's also a SCOPE certified physician for obesity management, as well as a postgraduate in diabetes by ADA. So trained in technology, trained in diabetes, trained in metabolic medicine, it makes him the right person to talk to us today about the ethical side of it. So we really want to talk about, we have learned a lot about AI in medicine today, but how can it be implemented in an ethical way? What are the loopholes? How do we overcome them? And I think these are very important questions that we need to address. So over to you, Dr. Bharat Saboo, to take us forward.
Thank you, Ashna ma'am. Thanks for the kind introduction. And first of all, thanks for inviting me to this prestigious and flamboyant platform. I always listen to this every last Wednesday, and every time you select something new and out of the box. Hats off to you and Team IDEC for that. I would like to thank Amit for setting up the tone so well for AI. But I will be playing a little spoil sport because I will be talking about the lacunas which are there in the system, because the job which has been assigned to me today is effective and ethical implementation of AI in diabetes care with a focus on potential risk, first of all, what are the biases around limitations and regulations. So as a customary thing, this is, just a moment, I don't know what is happening. Are my slides moving?
No, right now, no. Yes, now we can see the next.
So just a moment. So this is my disclosure because it's a talk about ethics. So I should be very ethical in having a disclosure in front. I have no conflict of interest to declare about this presentation on artificial intelligence and ethics. It is a presentation where I have not received any funding and it was developed independently. All the data which is here adheres to the ethical standards for privacy and protection. So this is my disclaimer. Ma'am, if you permit, let me reshare my slides. There's some bug, I think. Ma'am, my slide sharing is paused, it is saying. I don't know from where it has originated. Can the tech team help me?
Rahul?
So do you want to leave the meeting and join again once?
I can. I think it is working.
Because it's yeah, it's visible.
No, Rahul, I think I should rejoin.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yes.
So, ma'am, meanwhile, I just saw that somebody wrote that the audio conversation was probably not audible. So I was not aware of that. So I've just posted that in the chat box. That should be there. And I'll just post in some of the links that people are asking for.
Yes, because they couldn't scan the QR code.
Yeah, so I'll be just posting them.
Right, sure.
So sorry for the interruption. This is my disclosure, as I told you. Dr. Amit was talking about this, the artificial intelligence for diabetes, how it can enhance prevention, diagnosis, and effective management. This is a very wonderful paper if you want to read about whatever it can do. It can do everything what Amit has already covered. This is what he has done, and he has made my job easier. But what we are trying to do, the long-term vision is actually to develop a generalist medical artificial intelligence where a user could adopt a generalist medical AI model to a new task without retraining the LMM or training the LMM to accept different type of unstructured data. But there are 5 major areas of concern that are there with AI in health industry, and they are standing right as pillar in front of us today. So what are they? First is bias. Bias is a big issue. Is AI fair is a question which has been put up by all and everyone around who are looking at AI. Liability, it's a big question. Who is responsible for AI? Who will take the responsibility if something goes wrong? Security, how do we protect AI from the bad actors? Because we all know in every movie there are good persons and bad persons both. Wealth inequality, because there is a concern that the wealthier will become more wealthy with the use of AI. Power and control, and who will decide how to deploy AI. And this is actually, these are the 5 major ethical issues which are surrounding the AI. And I will be trying to solve this mystery today. Bias. Bias actually are inaccurate, incomplete, biased, or false responses. There can be data quality bias also. There can be automation bias. There can be skill degradation, which is again a bias. And there can be lack of informed consent, which is a bias in medical field. Now, inaccurate, incomplete, biased, or false responses. What it is? What LLM can do, they can contribute to contextual bias, where assumptions about where an AI technology is used result in recommendation for different setting. For example, if you want to understand, there is underrepresentation of training data and perspective from low and middle income countries. So AI model will not get those data which are from low and middle income countries, because there the penetration of AI would be low, and those data subsets would not be incorporated into the results which the LLMs are giving. Now, the false responses, which are known as hallucination, these are different from the hallucination we hear in the medical terms. These are that sort of hallucinations. They are indistinguishable from the factually accurate responses which are generated by an LLM. So one study which was there, it founded that the large language models, when provided a simple set of facts to summarize, would hallucinate at least 3% of time. And 3%, mind you, is a big number whenever medical advice is concerned. And it can go up to as high as 27%. So these models needs to be polished up to be accurate. Also, the current models depend on human prompt engineering. So it depends basically how you prompt the system. If you prompt it right, it will give you a right outcome. Now, again, the data quality and bias, it is there because all the models are limited by the end date. The example, ChatGPT 3.5, it had data till April 2023. ChatGPT 4, which was the newer version of ChatGPT 3.5, was trained up to April 2024. And now it can search up-to-date information from the internet. It has come very recently. Now, ChatGPT 4.0, which is a very recent addition, it has a 128K context window and has a knowledge cutoff date, which is not known. So we don't know actually from what data source it is procuring the data. So data quality bias is definitely there with AI. There can be automation bias. All the models, they may encourage automation bias in expert and healthcare professionals. They can influence actually the user's moral judgment. Even if the users know they are being advised by a chatbot, they are likely to follow it, and they are likely to follow a wrong advice as well. The use of models for moral judgment could lead to moral de-skilling, because their skill will go down in the moral values. And as physicians become unable to make difficult judgment or decision, and they will be more dependent on these bots, or they will be more dependent on these algorithms to give them a judgment. Now, informed consent is again an issue, because patient or their caregiver may be unable to withhold consent for AI if other options are not available. And if they are not available, they will not be getting an informed consent, and it would become then unethical. Skill degradation. This is a big issue. And that's why most of the schools have now recommended not to use ChatGPT for their students for their homeworks. So should be implemented in medical curriculum, because increased use of AI in medical practice may degrade or erode clinicians' competency, as they increasingly transfer routine responsibility to computers, and then their ability to decode, decipher information will go away, and then they will be solely dependent on AI for the outcomes. Now, patient-centered applications, we all know, these models could accelerate. Actually, they do wonderful, as Amit has told, to accelerate the use of AI by patient and lay people for medical purpose. They can even replace the search engines for information seeking. But these models can be used by individuals, and they can carry significant risk, such as discrimination against individuals with disability, cognitive or sensory impairment, or autism or spectrum disorder, because these people will not be putting their data into these systems, and these data would not be recognized. And these sort of people who are there in our community, the model may consider them to be non-existent, because they are not using the GPT world. The GPT world only recognizes one who is using them. So this is again a bias. Inaccurate outputs. inaccurate output, incomplete output, false statement, they can be given when it is used by individual without medical expertise, because they don't have a basis for challenging the response. They can consider every response as true. And suppose a model gives a wrong response, person can consider it right and may land up into trouble. They have no access to other source of information also, because they are solely dependent on these sort of models. And these models can also manipulate users. They can provide responses that appear correct with reference only to other models, because you can very well see in ChatGPT, if you ask to give them references and you can try it on your own, it posts fake references of articles. The articles which never exist are posted as articles. Now, impact on individual with disabilities, as I have told you, those people with mental disabilities, which are not using AI-based model for data input or data derivation, the LLMs may not have them in their memory, and hence generative AI may recognize people with disability as non-human, non-alive, or even emotionally flat. So this is a problem with this model because it learns from the inputs. And if no one is giving an input from that community doesn't exist. Manipulation and addiction. This is again a big problem because chatbot, they may adopt conversational pattern because they will understand your pattern of conversation to users, potentially persuading individuals to act against their self-interest or well-being. They can go up to that extent. And expert, they really warn of potential negative consequences. One such incident occurred in Belgium where an anxious person committed suicide after 6 weeks of intense conversation with a chat. And he was actually so doomed that he ended his life. Now, again, privacy. Privacy is a big issue. Everyone is talking about it because sharing information with models with other users could lead to the disclosure of identifiable medical information to third parties. And there is nothing we can do about it. Anything which we put into the domain of ChatGPT or things like that goes into OpenAI, and it becomes a property of OpenAI. LLMs may not respect the confidentiality of personal and health information shared by patient and lay people, and companies can use that data shared on the model to improve their AI model, and they can use it in future also. So this is again a big concern. The concerns which are there related to privacy are information privacy, anonymity, surveillance, autonomy, non-discrimination, and ownership of information. These are all the points which needs to be tackled, and everyone is talking about these things because who would be owner of the information? Suppose a Dali draws a painting, who is the owner of that painting? The person who has given the prompt or the Dali? So this is a question, and this question still wanders our mind. Who will be the owner of that? Now, deterioration of doctor-patient relationship will also be there. It is happening already. Patients are coming to us asking from ChatGPT, and then they are asking physician. The physician-patient relationship is at risk. As patient, they use information they find to challenge or seek more information from the healthcare provider. And this could reduce or eliminate the reliance on professional medical judgment. It becomes very cumbersome to answer to the questions which are even wrongly answered by ChatGPT. Then patient consider ChatGPT to be right and us to be wrong. And if AI technology reduces contact between provider and patient, it will actually undermine the general supportive care such as human-human interaction, because we all know human-human interaction play a role in healthcare industry. Now, epistemic justice and hermeneutic injustice. So epistemic injustice is a potential consequence of substituting a healthcare provider judgment with that of a LLM. As I have told you, patients come to us, they talk that ChatGPT has told me this. Maybe ChatGPT would be wrong, but they consider their healthcare provider to be wrong. And then hermeneutic injustice, when there is a gap in shared understanding and knowledge that puts some people at a disadvantage with respect to their lived experience, social experience, or their own understanding of their physical or mental condition. So these two things also exist, and they are a big deterring factor to AI. Clerical function and administrative task, I do agree, because documentation, we all know, is a major cause of physician burnout, and 1/4 to 1/2 of our time goes into documentation. So these models aim to return time to healthcare professionals, and they can reduce burnout even by doing the documentation job easy. But in country like India, where we have often incomplete data set, it can lead to inconsistent or hallucination results by the language models. So this is again a matter of concern because the data should be correct and it should be incorporated fully for a model to work well. Now, medical research and drug development, again, the models are trained on millions of academic articles. They can analyze scientific research to answer questions. They can extract information or generate relevant text. So the high income country bias exists because the company which is owning the model drives the bias and lack of accountability are a concern. And the company which is there in that country, the country automatically becomes the owner of the data. The World Association of Medical Editors, therefore, have restricted authorship to humans. They don't allow bots to publish papers. Now, the healthcare delivery outside the healthcare system raises question about whether such technology should be regulated as clinical or they could be called a wellness application. There is a big debate going on this. Lightly regulated models can present a risk if used by patients without regulatory safeguards, including the use of a model for medical device or self-diagnosis. And even if the information is correct, individual without medical training who is using that information to treat a patient is actually wrong, and he can misinterpret or misuse it also. There is a big impact on labor and employment, which is coming with this AI drive, because AI-driven automation is expected to lead to a loss of at least 300 million jobs, and particularly in those areas where high skills are required, like finance, medicine, and legal activities. So this is a Challenger report, which clearly shows that the layoff increased in last year's May owing to impact of artificial intelligence. This is again various articles where Meta has layoff, which was done to many of its employees after even 7 days of joining. Then recent data shows AI job losses are rising, but the number don't tell the full story. Again, AI eliminated nearly 4,000 jobs in May, a report says from the Money Watch. Now, this is a very interesting piece from the World Economic Forum, the human machine frontier. And it is telling us the proportion of tasks completed by humans versus machine. In 2022, 34% of job was done by machine, 66% by human, while it is being projected that in 2027, almost 43% of job would be done by machine and humans would be restricted to 57%. So 9% job which was done by humans would be transferred to machines and 9% would be unemployed. Now, this is again top 25 occupations where you can see the AI is impacting. They are from bottom to top. A truck driver may not be impacted by AI. Caregiver, cook, and look at here, medical assistants, poor or fair Gen AI rating in the average job posting on Indeed. This is the data from Indeed, where it has shown that what are the jobs which are going to be impacted badly by AI. This is a very interesting meeting between Rishi Sunak and Elon Musk. This was in November 2023, a business connect meeting. And it created headlines because Elon Musk said in this meeting that AI will eventually create a situation where no job is needed. And actually, he was very right in saying this because this is a survey again to see that will AI do much of the work currently done by humans within the next 50 years. So 7% people only said definitely not. 93% people, out of them 50% said probably, 15% said definitely. So 65% people agree to it that AI will replace them in the next 50 years. Only 25% said probably not with a doubt. 7% were confident that it will not replace them. Cybersecurity risk. After the layoff, this is again a big risk. The healthcare system increasingly rely on AI face potential threat from malicious attack, hacking, and data manipulation. Models are also vulnerable to cybersecurity risk like prompt injection, where a false prompt can be injected into the system. Data is fed by a third party, just like hacking, which is done, and causing it to behave in a way the developer didn't intend it. So suppose a virus impacts a healthcare delivery system, all the patients are given a wrong medicine, and you can imagine what will happen. Now, compliance with regulatory bodies. Investigations of models in European Union member states and Canada have leads to violations such as scrapping. They use personal data without consent. They were not informing people about the data usage. They were not preventing breaches of personal information, and they were publishing grossly inaccurate personal information due to hallucination, which is to the tunes of 27%, as I have told you. Now, dominance of large technology companies. This is again a big issue which is facing. There is a risk of industrial capture because all the big guns are into AI now, and they will soon be capturing the market. All the doctoral graduates are increasingly choosing to work in big companies, and all the brain, which is the big brain, is going to big companies. They dominate the outputs and outcomes, with the industry share of the largest AI model increased from 11% in 2010 to 96% in 2021. This is a robust increase. Now, all the major technology companies have been removing their ethics team to ensure the design and development of AI model adhere to internal ethics principle. The large technology companies have yet to have a history of, and they are not specialized in developing health products and services. So they are not actually sensitive to requirement of healthcare system, provider, and patient. They are just developing algorithms. Carbon and water footprints is again an issue which should be looked into because all the models require large amount of data and energy. Training a new model uses estimated 3.4 GWH of over 2 months and equivalence to the annual energy consumption of 300 US households. And they have a significant water footprint with training on early LMM, consuming 7 lakh liters of fresh water. The regulation of AI in India. Presently, India lacks a dedicated regulation for artificial intelligence. In 2018, NITI Aayog launched the first national AI strategy. In February 2021, NITI Aayog drafted the principle for responsible AI as continuation of the National Artificial Intelligence Strategy. In August 2021, NITI Aayog published the second segment of Principles for Responsible AI, the draft National Data Governance Framework Policy on May 26, 2022, and very recently on 15th March 2024, the MATI announced a new advisory replacing the previous advisory. So a lot is being done, a lot is to be done. And this is a paper which tells it all, the WHO Ethics and Governance of Artificial Intelligence for Health. Everyone should read this. This is a summary. It is done by Deepu, Avnish, and Amit from Doctors AI community, and this is a very good paper to read indeed. This was my review article on impact of ChatGPT on enhancing healthcare in India, where I clearly mentioned about the ethical challenges which I am talking about today regarding biases, consent, data protection, and the privacy issues which are there. And that is actually the thing should be looked upon. So the take home is, we all know AI has transformative potential. It has enhanced patient experience, as Amit has told. It gives a huge support to the healthcare professional. It is a source of continuous learning, but there are a lot of challenges to address, like ethical concern, legal and regulatory compliance, and operational hurdles. The future directions can be advancement in AI research, because research is the only way forward which can make us more ethical. There should be a collaborative effort between essential collaboration among technologists, healthcare professionals, especially policymakers and society. And there should be ethical guidelines and regulatory framework, which should be country specific for development of robust guidelines and policies. Because AI is just a tool, and the choice about how it gets deployed is actually ours. With that, I thank you all for the patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bharat. And thank you, Dr. Amit and Bharat, both for taking this. And this is like, now we are seeing two sides of a coin, and we will have a wonderful discussion. We have lots of questions, and we will also need now your thoughts on those. Before we go ahead with the questions, let me just thank all our viewers and say hello again to all our viewers, because we have more than 1,300 viewers logged in right now, watching us, listening to us at that moment, and from more than 10 countries. So a warm hello to all our viewers from Argentina, Nepal, Pakistan, Nigeria, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Canada, Tanzania, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Libya, and also many more countries which I could not read out. So do keep tuned, and anyone who has missed this and you would like to share the same, a recording of this will be there in the repository in our school on the IDEC website. So in a week's time, you will be able to access it there. Dr. Neeta has joined us. So our IDEC team is here. And
I've been here, and a fantastic lecture by both Amit and Bharat. Thank you so much for being here. You two were just awesome.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a
So
lot.
I'm going to set the ball rolling with a very interesting question, which is I want you both in role reversal now, right? So I want Bharat to tell us where do you think is a great role for AI? Where are you comfortable using AI in the country? And I want Amit to say where not to use it. So both of you give us the opposite view, and then we will go ahead with the questions.
Ma'am, that's a very good question. Basically, we lack in counseling. Counseling is the biggest area where we can use AI. And Amit was right in saying this, that counseling can only be done in our busy clinics with the help of AI. We really don't have time. And I'm very sorry to say this myself, that even we don't have time in our busy day-to-day clinical practice to counsel our patient, to quench all his thirsty queries regarding diabetes in and around, because he can have petty questions around diabetes which we are not able to answer. And definitely AI is a solution. But again, one more thing where we can take help of AI is to make our patient more compliant in terms of medication adherence, in terms of follow-ups, and in terms of monitoring. These are the two areas I find AI to be most promising right now in healthcare system.
Dr. Amit,
All
where
right.
would you
Yeah.
not use AI?
So as I said in the beginning, that data is going to be the fuel for any AI model to work. And if you look at the way we have evolved as a country, if I talk India specific, this is a space that we're really lacking. Data. We don't have structured data. We don't have data at all, leave alone structured data or clean data. So I think at the moment, at least not for the next 5 to 7 years, I would not be comfortable using any AI tool which can act as a clinical decision support system. Because to build a CDSS, we need a lot and lot of data, a demographic data, a lot of structured data, a lot of clean data, and that data points also needs to be run through multiple algorithms that has to be evaluated and validated by the clinician group. So CDSS, I think it's too early for us, although there are some CDSS tools across the globe which are available and you can start exploring it. But to be very honest, putting that into real practice, I would say not yet, maybe in the next 3 to 5 years as we evolve. The second part, which we are very, very passionate about, is not using anything which involves AI that is not validated by our peer groups, because that's going to be a very important key point message. If AI tool is being built by a tech friend, it needs to undergo a robust validation, a robust evaluation by the experts of the medical community. That puts the human in the loop. So let's not use any AI that has got no human in the loop, because again, coming back to what Dr. Bharat said, that first rule, we should not do any harm.
Right. So point taken home is we want it to be validated by the medical community. Right. So we have a lot of questions here, and Sanjay sir has also joined us. Dr. Sanjay sir, you want to say something before we start with the barrage of questions?
No, I'm not going to hold you up from asking questions because I think both the lectures were extremely interesting and I was keenly listening to both of them. I think they were very well delivered. So I'm going to let you continue and let you have a field day with all the questions with these two. Let me not hold you up.
Right. So I think on the same note that both of you have answered, there's a question by Dr. Kailash here, and it's on the same note saying that in a country like China and India, where there are a large number of people, populous countries, and shortage of doctors per per number of patients, wouldn't this be a great opportunity? And what is the limiting factor? Could you comment on this?
Ma'am, it is true that
AI.
we are in dire need of doctors. We really need doctors, especially in our remote areas in our country. We need doctors, and we need qualified doctors. So is true with AI. We need an AI which is qualified. So AI becomes qualified with it, which when it has a good set of data to work upon. Unfortunately, like Amit was saying, we don't put the data sets in. We don't put all the fields in our history sheets. I'm not saying everyone, but most of people don't put in. They are just concerned with diagnosis and treatment. That's it. I have seen many prescriptions where even BP is not mentioned. So it poses a risk when we develop an AI model around a data which is not accurate, which is not complete, because the incomplete data will miss out on all those entities which are actually present, but the data doesn't think that they exist. So they can miss out on the correlations which are existing. And that's where a clinical model like Amit has said becomes deceptive. And in medical terms, deceptive means nothing but means lethal. So it can become lethal at times. We need at least 10 years, not just time, but a determination, a zeal to put all our data into digits. It should be digitalized from all the corners of country, in all the geographic strata, all the economic strata, and all the clinical strata, from the general practitioner to the super specialty. Not, it is not required that full data set should be entered, but a part of data should be entered. So that the AI should have a feel of all the data sets which are there, right from every nook and corner of the country to all the clinical strata. And then we can develop a robust AI model, which will be a world-class model to show to everyone. But it will require time and determination.
So definitely a possibility, but it's a little early for that
Yes.
as a solution. Okay. So I think a very important point you have brought out is, okay, we do need them, but we still need them to be very accurate, to be very robust, to be very well validated. So perfect. On the same note, there are a lot of questions. I'm sorry, a few of them are going to be repetitive because it's very similar, the kind of responses that are coming in. But one of the things is that that a lot of them have mentioned is, so currently, if a patient is using AI for self-treatment, how safe is it? So that is something that is happening. And how would you see this? Because most of us as clinicians are quite upset with our patients when they Google their symptoms and come with all kinds of answers. So is it something similar, or is AI something different? I mean, for most people, AI means, okay, you Google your symptoms and come up with a whole list and go to the doctor and say, doctor, you're wrong. So what do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, how can you explain that?
For an individual to get access to AI, it means ChatGPT. That's how siloed it is at the moment. Most of it. I mean, unless you're
Right.
using a paid version of Gemini or Copilot. So I guess the safety of using a generative AI model for self-treatment would be putting you as much as risk as you would be Googling your medical query. So I guess the risk factors is just the same, rather more, because in this context, it is generating information. See, there is a difference between Google and generative AI. Google is extracting information, and then you have to find out of it, right? You have the option to choose which paper to read or which website link to open. But what generative AI does is that it extracts, it accumulates, and then it generates the content for you. So that's where it gets very, very tricky, and a catch-22 situation comes, that if it can generate an information which might be harmful to you. So again, brings the question of using a certain tool that is only validated by the expert community, because at the end of the day, it will ensure that at least it might not solve all your purpose, but it's not going to do any harm.
Right. So you were talking about the more data we have, and then building up is going to be more robust. So a question has come from Dr. Prithvi that doctors have a very little time. They're using digital EMRs, and there's so much of technology that they're trying to use and such vast data sets. So they have limited time. And what is the incentive for them to actually feed in all this data? I mean, it's a very, very practical question, I believe, because lots of people, when he asks them, why don't you have data? They say it's too much time, too much effort, too much cost. I mean, why would they do it?
A very practical incentive would be they will be having all the data of their patient with them, which they can utilize in so many ways. If they are putting all the data sets in, and if they learn how to do a little bit of juggling with AI, they can bring out whatever they want. They can snatch all those patients which are there living in rural areas, providing a list of patients in rural areas with high HbA1c, with the increased microalbuminuria. This is a very basic example I am telling you. If they're putting all the right data sets just for the investigative part. Compounding to that, if they can put the exercise data in, then they can know what patients who are doing which exercise. They can counsel on them. They can increase and leverage their practice based on all these small inputs. And this is the first incentive which I think I'm prompted to use since past 10 years, and I'm using it. I don't say very beautifully, but I am using it to maximal potential. And that is what is helping in my patients. Second, it will give you a loads of publication. When you talk about publication, when you have your own data set, you can just run it through Excel and it will give out something with the help of AI, that what are the factors which are linking to these factors, and just a click and your paper is ready. So these are the two most interesting incentives I think Amit would add to it. Amit, what would you like to say to the incentives?
I will just make it very simple and nuanced for the viewer to understand. It's just like driving a car, right? So when you are looking at treating patient without data, without records, you're just looking in front through your windshield. You're just looking what's ahead. What data and what your digitalization of health record is going to give you it is going to give you the rear view access mirror. So when you're driving, you just don't want to look in front, but also you want to look what's behind and how has been the journey of the patient. It's going to give you the bird's eye view. So it is only a matter of question that you need to understand that how important that is when you're taking a clinical decision for your patient. So beyond all that thing, having your data, having getting your publications and all, it's going to make you feel rich in understanding the patient's condition. And what more does a clinician want better than that?
Perfect.
Right. I call it my own quality audit kind of a thing. So
Absolutely.
just looking at my own data, I know where I have gone wrong. What could I have done differently? And I learn every day from my own data and hopefully get better and better with time. So I think that answers that question. On a similar notes, we're talking about patient concern. Dr. Roberta has asked that can AI be customized to respond to every patient, because doctor-patient relationship communication is very important. That's a key factor. So is it possible to have that kind of connection in the way it responds, or will it just state something that is correct? Because we know that we need, as you were talking about, the empathy factor. So how does that happen? Is it possibility or not?
It is possible, ma'am, because
Okay.
Dr. Roberto, it is possible because AI is a self-learning thing. And AI soon becomes super intelligent. And once it becomes super intelligent, it starts behaving like you. It is as empathic as you. And the ChatGPT 4o has proven it. It is giving emotional tones now to the conversation. So AI model evolves, and definitely a patient would be talked in his responsive language, and the response will become more crisper, more to the tunes of patient once the AI model learns what the patient likes and what he wants to hear.
Yeah, so just I will give you a simple example of what all of you have been using. I mean, some of our friends have been using is Madhu. And what we have learned while we have been developing is that it has got a fantastic memory. So once an individual is saying, I've got a type 1 diabetes, it will keep that in the memory, deep in the deep tech memory, and it is going to weave its response based on the patient's medical records. And that's how we have actually tuned Madhu, that it will find out your entire medical record, keep it in the deep tech memory. And every time it is responding, it is going to be always one step ahead in the fine-tuned response in a more personalized manner. We have seen the evolution of the response happening over the last 4 months. Trust me, the gross response that we were getting in the beginning of using Madhu is completely evolved. And I've just shared with you how intelligently it is picking up when somebody is saying that I'm getting nightmare in the night. It's picking up that, look, this is a hypoglycemia and you need to get to this and do this and this. And maybe you need to connect with your healthcare provider. We can only understand that how intelligent these systems are getting. And it is fantastic. Even for creators like us, we are getting fascinated by the response fine-tuning that we are getting when we are developing these things.
True. I think I have used Madhu and I find also responses, the language is
Yes.
very supportive, very empathetic. It's something very warm. So it doesn't feel like having some kind of information being thrown at you. It has a very nice phrasing when it comes to it. So hopefully that will be something that we will be looking at in the future. So Dr. Hussain has a very interesting point here. He says that if senior doctors are using technology like this, shouldn't we just use it? We should include it in the curriculum for our students in medical colleges. Because if this is the future, and if from 5 to 10 years from now, that is what you're expecting, should that be in the curriculum?
That should be definitely done. And it is
Definitely.
the future.
What aspects do you feel would be there?
What aspects? I mean, basics around AI, how AI can be used to leverage healthcare system. These are the important beginning points to begin with, because I don't believe coding and all those things are required in medical curriculum. But to weave a model with the doctor's mindset is entirely different to weave a model from a techno mindset, because both these mindsets are different. A doctor thinks differently from a disease and a patient's perspective. So that thought process when comes into AI makes the sense. And that is why AI should be taught in curriculum, because a doctor without AI and a doctor who is not knowing AI 10 years down the line would be obsolete.
So I'm talking to two clinicians who are
Yeah.
trained in AIT from in AI from IIT, etc. And I was like, oh my God, this was something I ran away from when I was in college. All right, so it's time to retrain ourselves. So Rennie has asked us, "Ki, how is data protected in such AI models?" It's a question that comes to everyone's mind. I know that people who know, but could you, in a way that we would understand, explain it to us, Dr. Amit?
Yeah. So this is still a gray zone as of now, and this zone is going to evolve, if I can predict it correctly, in the next 2 years. Now, you will see if you look at the data protection law across the globe, and this is something that we all must understand. In the US, we have the Data Protection Act, and we also have the GDPR in the European Union. And somewhere down the line, India has come up with the Data Protection Act and the rule which was passed by the Parliament in 2023. And most people still don't know about it, but it's quite good. So two extremes, the US and the European Union, and India has come up with something in between, taking from each of them that we have understood learning. I think this is a space that needs to evolve not only globally but also regionally across every country, because the data protection rules should not be very strict that it curbs the development and the weaving of the models around it. Neither should it be very lax that it should completely defeat the purpose and becomes so generalized that the data can be misused without being anonymized, etc., and it can lead to other consequences. So this is a space, ma'am, I will say that is going to involve. For at the moment, for us, what is very important, that if you're using an electronic medical record, you must get into an NDA with your provider, which will ensure that your data is protected. And at the moment, the data belongs to you at the moment. Well, once ABDM comes in, and ABDM comes in big, the data does belong to the patient. That has already been set by the government of India. So the owner of the data is the individual. It's neither the service provider nor the end user. It is the patient who is the owner of the data. And that's how the data protection acts are going to evolve. About the use of generative AI, just be a little careful when you're using it, ChatGPT, to get into patients' intricate details. Try to feed it with de-anonymized data. Just get the patient's name, demographics out of it, and feed it, and just try to weave around it, because although it's like a drop in the ocean, but you're still feeding patients' private details to a proprietorship large language model. So we still do not know the consequences. And most importantly, to end, it is very important that from our end, from the medical community, we must come up with policies and guidelines how this data is going to be covered.
So are there currently a specific certification we should look for to give us confidence that this is safe?
So I think what the government is going to come up is the ABDM compliance. So they have the M1, M2, M3 compliance that will actually solve all the questions that you're asking.
Right.
So 1, 2, and 3 will make it data interoperable. It will be data protected, and it will ask the patient a user ID before you can access the data. So let's just say if it's ABDM compliant going ahead, that we are, answering the Data Protection Act answers.
Perfect. So we have a question from Takashi, and he's asking that what is the quantity of data that is needed to ascertain the predictability by AI? That it would be correct. Is there something like that? Can we quantify that?
Rather than quantity, the quality of data matters.
Okay.
And quality, if the data is good in quality, even a small set of data can do wonders. And if the data is corrupt, which is a garbage data in technological terms, it will not help. If we have a million data, it is all sketchy data, and it will not help us. So a data set which is good data, no matter small amount it is very good.
Right. Yeah. So on a similar note, you did mention meetings, as you said, with Microsoft, etc. So big players. So Gabriel has asked, big players like Google, Microsoft, Meta, and when they jump into healthcare and AI, they have all the resources and connections. So where does that take AI And
Yeah,
you know,
that's a
all
really a good
these
question.
it's a pretty scary thought, I mean, to me at least, as a layperson for this. What do you think?
So
What?
I think they're already into healthcare. I think
Okay.
Microsoft is into AI healthcare. Google is working very hard. Meta is, I know, Amazon is trying to build up a language model on medical language model. So I think they're already into healthcare. They'll be coming in very big into healthcare. Let's
Okay.
take it. Like, let me give you an example. If you see the largest EMR provider in the US is Epic, and Microsoft has already partnered with Epic in adding generative AI to Epic. So you can already see these big giants coming in. How we respond to this is actually going to determine our future. So whether we let ourselves into the hand of our tech friends without asking a question, without asking for validation, without asking for the right set of data to work on, or whether we ask those right questions, and those right questions can only be asked if we are literate to ask those questions. So there again comes the question of education and data and AI literacy. That's what we've been focusing around at Doctors AI. And if we can ask the right questions, not just to the big players, because you see why these Microsoft and Google is going to play an important role is because to build a model, especially generative AI model, you need lots and lots of tokens, and you need a large GPU, right? And these GPUs are actually in possession with these big tech giants. So it's not easy to create a large language model. One can bring a small language or a medium language model, but to build a LLM, you need billions and trillions of data fed into a GPU and a lot of NVIDIA tokens to work on, and that's quite an expenditure. So it's going to be only done by the tech giants. So while we need them to develop that for us, we need the LLMs to be developed. We need to ask those questions. We need to be out there asking those questions to them and also to the policymakers. Hey, what have you done exactly to sort of give us, the validation and the evaluation, and who have been the people involved in it, so that when we will be the end users, we feel safe in using it. So the next few years are going to be very, very critical. How we approach to the use of AI in medicine, that is literally going to determine the future of our next generations.
So it also gives me the thought that we really have to get trained in this, like
Absolutely.
because as you said, we're not literate in this field enough to ask the right questions. And just to ask, we will have to know a lot about it. Right. So Kavita asks us that similar to a drug development, shouldn't these healthcare technology AI go through the similar rigid scrutiny processes?
Yes, it should be. And that is what we are vouching for. We are saying that it should be validated. It should be proven effective. Just like we have CVOT trials, there should be outcome trials. And without outcome trials, there could not be any healthcare technology which can act as a clinician. It should not be. And that is what we doctors need to understand. We should not accept whatever is coming to us in name of AI. And because everything is actually not greener. And there can be lacunas, pitfalls, there can be programming errors, there can be biases, there can be marketing biases, and we all need to look into it. And that is why all these tools should go into robust clinical trials before being implemented for our patients.
Now, just to add to it, ma'am, any particular AI tool, if it is being used to bring a clinical outcome modification in a patient, it actually falls under the category of a clinical trial, just like you would put any drug trial.
Right.
And the problem is the CDSO does not recognize AI as a separate wing. It just puts it in the category of software. But if any AI tool needs to be launched, technically speaking, it needs to be licensed by the CDSO. Otherwise, it cannot be conducted. And that's what we will be heading with Madhu as well. We'll be going with an ethical clearance and launching an actual clinical trial, which will be governed, which will be actually sort of monitored by their clinicians, and the patient use we will see, and then we will see how that goes. That's actually how it should be done.
So Dr. Mahima has asked us that while we do have like connected meters, we have those views, dashboards, everything, and even in spite of this technology with doctor and patient, it has still limited reach today in the country. So do you really see the patients and doctors are ready to take a next step leap using AI when we are still hesitant about the current technology?
The bridge between these two is education. Education to patient, education to doctors. Once we make them understand the importance of these connected glucometers, what the previous value and the future value of a blood sugar value can be united, we can show them the graph, we can show them the algorithms of how it works. then only this thing will solve. Because patient, I see you are very right. 90% of the patient who have connected glucometer never connect it. And
Right.
these glucometers go unconnected. Even doctors is not bothered to get it connected. So the
Exactly.
education should be there for both the ends. As far as doctors are concerned, it should be there. It should be a robust education in terms of technology. But also for the patient, there should be a mass media communication regarding the education where they can leverage technology tools for their own betterment, not for any other person.
I couldn't agree less because I work in the rural space with type 1 children living with type 1 diabetes in rural part of the areas, and technology has helped them amazingly. These connected meters, all these things have actually helped the most low resource setting. So I really believe the education, as you mentioned, can make the difference to make everyone use technology. Right. So we are running short of time, but we have a few questions. So I'll take it rapidly now because I really want to try to get everyone's question in. That there are a couple of questions by Dr. Saxena, Dr. Kritika about how can we use diabetes detection with AI. So there are some papers which are about the vocal speed and intensity, which could detect diabetes as well as early diabetes predictors with machine learning. So about screening for diabetes through AI. Any thoughts, any studies that you could share?
So this exact example of using a speech to detect diabetes is an example where an AI tool is being created by some researcher without the consultation of a medical fraternity. You need to understand the need gap before we come up with the tool. Would you really want to diagnose diabetes out of the voice? Well, no, there's so many ways in which we can diagnose diabetes or we can try to solve the problem. The second part is, of course, the prediction tools using machine learning. That will, of course, be very, very useful. And the power of it will come if it gets integrated with our electronic medical records, of course, in an unbiased way. But again, that depends on a large, diverse set of data, more geographic specific data to learn on, and only then these predictive algorithms can be used. Well, as of now, the predictive algorithms that we see are mostly based on the Western data, which might not mimic the direct outcome that we would want to in our Indian subpopulation. So we are on it. Let's hope for the best.
Right. So there's a question, I think this has been covered about data security. We'll not go into that. And another very interesting point by Gabriel is about the advertising and how the companies can use AI to actually, maybe big pharmaceutical companies could use it to push their product. And could impact practice. So do you think
Yes,
is the way you can safeguard that?
Definitely, they are taking data out of EMR and they are luring you into it. They are
Right.
definitely doing it.
So I think this is being done by Facebook. If you see the way Facebook advertises a product to you, it uses a lot of AI. It's simple machine learning. It's been there for years. All this we are talking today because of OpenAI and ChatGPT, but trust me, this has been going on since 2014, 2015. It's the same way that you will get a prediction coming in as who is the target audience, and you would use that kind of a data mapping to reach to the target audience with the right product. It's fair advertisement. I guess it's something that we have to get used to it.
Okay, right. So I'm going to end from my end, just the questions part of it. I'm going to ask the last question by Dr. Jain, and I think he's very aptly put it to both of you. Do you see ChatGPT as a competitor or as a friend? It
Friend.
sounds like a essay we used to write in childhood. Now tell us about it. Both of you, please. And also, along with it, to conclude, I would ask you to give your opinions, your last take-home messages to the audience, because it's already 10:30. Answer this and your take-home messages, and then we will say our bye-bye.
Yeah, Dr. Saboo first.
It's definitely a friend, unless it is not used right. It is a friend, and it all depends how you use it. But just from my talk, there are certain issues which we need to sort out, and no one can sort it out apart from us. There are ethical issues, data-related issues, and all these can be sorted out if we can create a proper literacy in and around AI in our healthcare ecosystem, in all the strata of healthcare in India, all the branches, all the subspecialties. When the data is integrated, then only we can see the down-rooted person sitting at the remote corner of the country to be benefited with this marvelous technology called AI.
And your take-home message to everyone?
Yes, to Gabriel, the way we look at AI is exactly going to be the way AI will look at us. So for me, ChatGPT is neither a friend nor a foe. It's a tool. And I would be very happy using this tool in the most practical way, in the most ethical way, in the most guided way for the right purpose, for the right individual. And the take home message to all of you out there is this is an ever evolving landscape, and this is just the start. What we need to do as clinician is that we need to first be curious. That's the first step. You need to be curious. The second, we must be open to this adaptation. And once we are open to this adaptation, we will be able to adopt this technology, take away that inertia and adopt this technology for the better use. But when you are doing that, please be literate about it. Please get into AI education. Please spend some time towards AI research. We've been all brought up reading research, evidence-based research. Let's get into intelligence, data-driven research so that we can ask that how question. And this is my take-home point. This is no longer a Star Trek movie. We need to come out of that wow factor and ask that how question. How is this happening? How is this algorithm giving this response? How is this insulin pump actually giving this particular basal dose predictor? Has anybody asked that? How does this algorithm work? What is control theory? What is PID algorithm? We need to ask those questions. Maybe only then we will find the right use case to use it. And maybe only then we will be able to take away that inertia from amongst us to use it. And most importantly, at the end, AI will evolve as humanity, as humans. We must also evolve. And history has shown us that humanity always comes out the better.
Hooray, with those wonderful words of a balance of technology and humanity, all of us have to go back. Now, these two speakers have added work to our kitty. So we have more to think about, and wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Bharat and Dr. Amit. This couldn't have been a better session. Lot of new things to learn. I think everything for me was new learning, and I am feeling very guilty. I never thought, how did this pump actually calculate it? I'm feeling extremely guilty that why did I not think of this? And I stand, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm going to think
next time I'll make sure that Bansi Saboo puts this in the DTech, a session on
how does this happen? And I teach that to all my kids. I tell them what, when, how, why are your best friends. Ask them, and I'm guilty that I did not ask because I thought it's too complicated.
We already did a full webinar on this. We did a full webinar on this, and I'll be happy to share the link of that webinar. We did a What Doctors AI webinar on this.
Thank you, Dr. Bharat and Dr. Amit.
These two guys have just disrupted our lives, which was
I know, it's become difficult. It was so simple. Okay, so to our audience out there, you were wonderful, and thank you for so actively participating from across the globe. Please watch this space every fourth Wednesday or the last Wednesday of each month at 9 p.m. India Standard Time. You can have this recording on the IDEC website. Also to invite you for the IDEC meeting, the physical meeting in Pune on 6th and 7th of July. So do go to the website, see all the
7th July, sorry, correct.
Yes, 5th, 6th, 7th of July. And that is in Pune, India. And you can find all the exciting topics that are going to be there. It's a very, very focused science meet, lots of hand-on workshops, lots of technology, as well as all other aspects of metabolic care, nutrition, and obesity. So with that, we would like to close tonight with a big thank you to our wonderful speakers and everyone else who joined in tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.